It is so bad for you.
It is bad.
Mountain
I know
water.
you mean. What is it? I can't even see.
It says
it.
liquid death.
Death.
What's it, an energy
Oh.
drink?
Yeah, I wanna drink that. No.
You know, I'm not espousing this drink. The reason I bring this up is marketing fascinates me.
There's marketing there.
The ability of companies to generate a meme or to come up with some type of a, well, we would have called it a gimmick back in the days, but to come up with some type of an ad that piques people's interest. Liquid death. Drag your thirst into the woods and bury it in an unmarked grave. Another tagline for them is murder your thirst. Liquid death.
Do they still sell that?
Is it not a sign of the times that the marketing teams on Madison Avenue come up with this?
Right. This is borderline of what we say anti-establishment type of ad. Like we're used to smart water. It's good for you. Smart people drink it. Don't you want to be smart?
No, I got liquid death.
Or the snooty aspect of water. I'm so wealthy that my water comes from the rarest places on earth. It's Fuji water. I pay $8 a bottle. Or however marketing comes at you, this intrigues me. And that's modern. We go back to the 80s. Do you remember
Oh, yeah.
Wendy's? Wendy's is good at this. And they still are. They've got a social media presence. They're zinging out stuff all the time. This is, where's the beef?
I remember.
You remember it. This was a shot across the bow of McDonald's at the time. Wendy says, come on, how much are you gonna shrink that? How much are you gonna shrink that burger? This is from the 50s. And I only show you this because it's nothing new. I fascinated Germany coming out of the destruction of World War II. They are hated. And they have to sell cars in America. Now my grandfather, he drove a Cadillac. It was 20 feet long. The lanes back then were 8 feet wide. That caddy was probably 10 feet wide. It was a yacht, they would call those cars. And Volkswagen comes out in the 50s and says, you know what? We'll sell you a lemon. We want you to think small. Hey, if you run out of gas, at least it's easy to push. You see that type of counterculture, that type of, you guys may not want this, but we're going to put it out there because it's not what you expect.
They sold a lot of them.
They sold, hey, my grandfather had a Cadillac and my dad had a Bug. And a Volkswagen thing. You remember that?
No, that's what those
We had a
were.
bug
Those
and the
were
bug
dangerous.
wagon, the one with the little.
In a van, the Bug van. Right. They were successful in this type of advertising. It does. It has a good place. It works. And I think there's a aspect of it that intrigues me because I see this in how God made his choices. How God chose to bring things to fruition in the scheme of redemption is not any way man would normally have done it. Look at this encounter in John chapter 18. This is a conversation between Jesus and the Roman governor, Pilate. And all leaders were fascinated by these religious zealots, they would think. They were fascinated by John the Baptist. They wanted to talk to him, wanted to hear him. King Agrippa, fascinated by Paul, wanted to interview him, wanted to talk to him. Here, Pilate, he's wanting to figure out this character, Jesus. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" That's quite a question. From a Roman who's barely keeping control of this city to come to a man and say, "Are you a threat to me? Are you a threat in any way? Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?" And Jesus answered and said, "My kingdom is not of this world." Was he a threat to Pilate? My kingdom is not of this world.
Yeah, I don't want your job.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want your job. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world. Everyone expected it to be from the world. Everyone expected it to be physical. They really were counting on this fulfillment of prophecy to be that which they had always experienced and known. And Jesus says, "I'm not here to rule this world." Look at how Jesus came here. How he was brought to earth. I would be so wanting to listen in on the conversation between the Father, the Son, the Spirit, and any amongst the divine council when they say, "How are we going to do this? You're going to come to earth. How are we going to do this? Will you be born in a palace? Will you be of wealth? Will you be educated in the highest standards?" How was he brought?
Lower.
Lowly. Really as low as it could be. Unwed. Poverty. Pretty much rejected.
He's born in a barn.
Born in a barn. They made that decision. That wasn't just happenstance. They made the decision that he would be born this way. It's not what you would expect. It just isn't. Now, look at the type of a leader. Because he is the Messiah. And this chapter has caused a lot of consternation as far as how can this be the Messiah? This is prophesied. And by prophesied, I'm saying God chose for this to be the way it would be. Isaiah 53, verse 2. For he, Jesus, grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form. He had no form. He had no majesty. He's the Son of God. And he is the Messiah. He has no form. Have you ever met someone who voted because of the looks of the candidate?
Yes.
I've seen it. John F. Kennedy was a good-looking fella. Bill Clinton swooned him. Obama, good-looking man.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
They had form.
And all members of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Majesty. Jesus didn't have either. Just doesn't make sense.
I used to think about the artist renderings of Jesus.
Yeah.
They came out in the Renaissance and so forth. And you know, like the blue eyes and the sun of Jesus. And reality kicks in and they go, he's from the Middle East. Probably looked a lot like Jamie Farr.
You
remember
know,
Jamie
I'll
Farr?
give you that. Yeah, I remember Jamie Farr. Well, I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Match.
Yeah. And
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
given that as it is, you could still have form and majesty.
Yeah.
No doubt that Solomon was brightly arrayed. David had authority. Saul was head and shoulders over everybody else.
Well, and
And he was a good-looking man.
they
Sorry.
were known for that. In the Bible, it talks about Saul being so tall.
And
It talks
good
about
looking.
David being so handsome.
Yep.
It talks about Solomon being so wise and being so rich. So they were known for that. Jesus was not known for either the way that he looked or where he came from.
And that's how God
Wanted it.
What did the Jews of old think of this, though?
Right.
This
Right.
is prophecy. What were they
Right.
thinking?
Right.
I mean,
It's a good
what
question.
did they think? You just
What good could come out of Nazareth?
Right.
With nothing good
That's what they
comes
were
out of
thinking.
Nazareth.
Yeah.
Right. Right. No form, no majesty that we should look at him, no beauty that we should desire him. Set a pretty low bar. Well, it wasn't just physical. He was despised. Why was he despised?
Because he maybe jealousy, they put for him there close and,
He was a threat,
yeah.
He challenged.
challenged.
And
It was different.
his teachings at the time were having people look within themselves and
Yes.
not liking what they see.
Yes.
When he was
Exactly.
I
small.
like that. That gave me chills. Yeah. Looking within yourself. You couldn't sit and listen to the Sermon on the Mount and go, man, I'm doing pretty good. You had to be rocked when you heard a lesson like that.
Yeah.
And it causes people to either love the individual and give their lives to him or hate him.
Yeah.
And they hated him.
Over the
Chuck.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Over the decades, we come across Hollywood productions of these times.
Yeah.
You know, especially the week before, during,
Yeah.
and after. And I remember in 1971, I was 7 years old and going to the movie theater and seeing Jesus Christ Superstar. And it was a musical, obviously.
Mhm.
But over the years, I didn't study enough to see what was true and what was false. But the message I got when Simon was telling him, you'll have the power, you'll have the glory, and the music stopped and he said to him, neither you, Simon, nor the 12, nor Jerusalem know what power is or know what glory is.
Mhm.
In the movie, I don't know if he stated that in the Bible. But the message
That's in
was,
my mind, though.
you guys don't know what power is.
Right.
This isn't power.
Right.
Right.
Despised, rejected, and esteemed him not. Well, we were talking, why was he a threat? Because he didn't come preaching anything popular. He didn't come preaching lower the taxes and free health care. What did he come saying?
I will give you.
All y'all are messed up and you need to change.
We need to change.
now.
You need to change. You need to stop seeking power for power's sake, and you need to start serving, is what you have to do. Look, he came out of the temple. Mark chapter 13. As Jesus came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, Rabbi, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings." And Jesus said to him, "You see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." So, you're J.D. Vance and they're setting you up for 2028. And you are starting to amass some powers. You got people backing you, and you come out of onto the National Mall, and someone says, "You see that house over there? You see 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? That's going to be yours, and man, it's going to be nice. You see that? That's the Supreme Court. That's going to back you. Over here, we got Washington's Memorial, Jefferson's Memorial. Beautiful place." And you go, "Destroyed. Every bit of it destroyed. Every bit of it flattened." You think that's popular? You think that person's going to get office? No. You want to prove the point further? You go into the temple and what do? You upend everything. You start knocking over tables, whipping people with a whip. You think that's popular? No. No. None of that brought people into the fold. All of it is what got him crucified. Every leader needs a good motorcade.
I just think to myself with the other verse that you had gone over, where there was nothing about him personally that would draw us to him. So you had to hear him. You had to watch him. You had to see his genuine love, concern, care for other people, to love him. And that's what made these disciples willing to go to death for him, is because they witnessed it. It wasn't his charisma, even though I think he had charisma because of what he said.
But we go back to the hearts being soiled, right?
Mhm.
If your heart's right, that's how you're affected. But if your heart's hard, because what they came out, the scribes and the Pharisees and the leaders came out and they heard the same sermons.
But
And they saw the same miracles, but it had the complete opposite effect to them. So it really is a matter of your heart. And it's always been that way, hasn't it? And God knows that and says, "I'm going to do this in a way that brings out the sincerity in people and really tests them all the way through." I wish Marinko was here this morning, because whenever I talk about law enforcement, I like Marinko to be here amongst us. We were talking about this at the range when we were out shooting the other day, and the fact that various parts of law enforcement become enamored with what intrigues them. You got guys who go to the gun range and they're on the ERT and they live and breathe that stuff. And then we have guys, you'll see them on the motorcycles, right? They live and breathe that. And to be a part of a motorcade for them when the president comes to town is a really big deal. Everything shuts down for a motorcade. You bring Putin into the car with you, the world takes notice of situations like that. But that's not anything new. That has always been. We know from history that when the conquering general comes to town after the war, what do? It's a ticker tape parade, yes. They're offering sacrifices. There's beautiful aroma in the air to him, death to the conquered king. But how does he come to town? He's riding on a chariot. It is drawn by stallions. It is a thing of majesty, plumes. It is every bit of man's glory and pomp that we can muster. Not a donkey.
That's right.
Not a donkey.
There it is.
Trendy and I live on a rock road. That's the best you can call it. It's a rock road. Every grandson has tripped and bloodied up his knees on our road. It's horrible. It's a cute little road. Down at this end of the road, there's a very, very wealthy man. Very wealthy man. I remember when he moved in, his wife was into horses. Now she's into alpacas.
That's both.
But back then, now it's both. But back then it was just horses. And one of the workers stopped and we were talking and he said, you know, we're building a barn back here for her horses. I said, really? He says, yeah. They've brought the wood from England. It was taken down from a castle and it was shipped over, and every stall that she will have her horses in will have this wood. Now this was almost 30 years ago. $10,000 a stall. That may not even seem like much nowadays, but back then, rocked my world. Horses of that value would be right down the street. A horse that lives in a $10,000 stall is a $100,000 horse.
At least.
At least.
Yeah.
And I'm not counting for inflation. Down at the other end of my road are cows. New rancher, inherited from his uncle. He has cows. We have coyotes. And those poor little cows, when they give birth, those little calves are in danger from those coyotes. The best thing they have found
Donkey.
is a donkey. So now I got two little donkeys. I got one end of my road where there's $100,000 horses, and I got another end of my road where there's two little donkeys. And they're so cute.
And they start braying at 1
But
o'clock
they're
in the
mean
morning.
as the dickens, those donkeys. They'll kick the life out of something.
Mhm.
Matthew chapter 21, Jesus tells his disciples, I want you to go into town and you're going to find what I need and you'll bring it back to me because this is the final week. And beginning in verse 4, this took place in order to fulfill what was spoken by the prophets. Now, again, fulfilling what the prophet says is language for this is what God chose. This is what God chose for his son, the King of Kings, to come into town. Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you. And what is he? Humble. He is humble. And he is mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. Well, the disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt, and they put on them their cloaks, and Jesus sat on them. If I sat on a donkey like most of you, if I sat on a donkey, my feet would touch the ground. I would look like one of those big kids who's trying to ride the tricycle that's just too little. You seen them, and they just kick their feet, and they just kind of scoot along. That's what it would be for a full-grown man to ride on a donkey. It just looks ridiculous.
Huge message.
It's a huge message. It really is. this is your king. And they praised him. They sang out, Hosanna, Hosanna. The king is coming. They knew the prophets. They knew what they were seeing. They knew that this is exactly how he was to come into town. And this is what he did. He rode into town on that donkey that day. He only ever was a part of one election that I know of. Only one time were the votes cast. Crucified. And who was his competitor? Matthew 27, the governor, he again comes out. Every year around this time, I try to do something really nice for y'all. I try to do something that, okay, I'm going to release a prisoner to you. Which of the two do you want me to release for you? They had a choice. Their choice was Joshua of Nazareth or Barabbas. That was the choice.
A resurrectionist and a murderer.
You get to vote. You get to vote. This is exactly how Barabbas is described. Matthew says notorious, not in a good way. Mark says insurrectionist. Luke says he's guilty of murder. And John says he's a robber and a bandit. That's quite. Jason could beat that guy, right?
I guess.
You haven't done any of these, have you?
I'm notorious.
You are, but in a good way. That's his competition. And God chose that. There's not an aspect of this that God didn't choose. Pilate said to them, "What shall I do with Jesus who is called the Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" Why is Pilate hesitating? What did his wife say? Hey,
Don't
I
touch
dream
this.
about this guy. I'm telling
Don't touch
you,
this.
this is bad. This is bad. Why? What evil has he done? And they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified."
We're more comfortable with the murderer who doesn't make us look at ourselves. This guy is making us look at
Or when you look at him, you go, "I'm better than that guy."
No.
You know, Chuck, the people who are shouting, "Let crucify him, crucify him," are the same ones who just a few days before
Amen.
were shouting Hosanna as they came into.
That's just crazy.
In fact, that's a study that I want to get into pretty soon, is that of the crowd.
How fast we
Either the wisdom or the folly of the crowd. Which is it most often?
How fast we can change.
How fast does it change? Well, at least he chose from the upper echelon, right? When he came. This is you. So, again, when they're having that conversation, well, how do you think I should be born? Well, I think you should be born in a manger. Well, how should I come to town? Well, I think you should ride on a donkey. How? Right? Well, who should I bring in as my disciples? Rabbis? Should I bring in Sanhedrin people? Should I bring in a priest or two? Who should I bring in to be the ones to spread the gospel to the rest of the world?
People who needed him.
Well, I think you're right. Blind, lame, simple, prostitutes, fishermen.
Let me rephrase that. People who knew they needed him. Because we all need.
You got one guy in here, probably has an education. You definitely got some folks in here who wanted to get rid of the Romans. It was quite a
Quite a plan.
Quite a plan. Quite a plan. At that time, Jesus declared, Matthew 11, verse 25, Jesus is praying to his Father, and what does he say? I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and the understanding, and you have revealed them to little children. Before Trundy and I were married, she had subscribed to a Christian magazine called The Chronicle. Is that the one? Comes out about every month. We still get it. And I flip through this thing, and I see the want ads. And I'm always shocked by the want ads, because this is nowhere in it. Preacher wanted. Ex-fisherman may apply. Blind guys who never made it out of the 8th grades, come on down. You know what they say? Bible, PhD required. Really? Really? That's what you're Church of Christ? And you're gonna come at me with, we want a 4-year degree, or don't even talk to us? There's a disconnect for me between this and that. Folks who won't sit and listen if you don't have DR in front of your name. What? Why would we take, you go, this is the plan, this is what I want, and we go, yeah, we don't want that. We're going to go over here, we need a big building, we need a big production, we need a big orchestra, we need a big name.
Chuck,
Yes.
I knew a preacher once, I was very impressed with, he had a PhD. But he said to me once, and I think he said to the entire congregation, Jim might remember this, he said, the more I learn, the more I realize this, I know so little.
I know nothing.
And I was just so impressed with that statement.
It's true, too.
You know nothing. Well, Jesus told his disciples, didn't he? Because how God chose for Jesus to be treated ain't any different than what he chose for you. Now that might rock you. It should rock you. That his son was hated. How are they going to treat you? If they love you, there's something wrong, actually. If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you are of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you. You see, I chose you out of the world. Therefore, the world hates you. If you don't see this in today's day and age climate, you're blind. The world hates you. They hate you because of your love for God.
Hate themselves.
1 Corinthians chapter 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and we will be finished with today. Paul says in verse 26, for consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise, according to the worldly standards. Not many of you were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. Is that true? It has always been true. But God chose. And I keep, God chose. God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are. Look, the church in the first century was nothing. You know what mattered? The Roman Empire. You know what conquered the Roman Empire?
It's,
To bring to nothing things that are. Now, why did God choose it? Why? He chose it so that you don't have a leg to stand on. So that no human being might boast in the presence of God. When you get to stand before God, what are you going to boast about? Your great deeds? Your brains? Your genetics? Your wealth? What are you going to boast about?
I always think about when you stand before God, you're not gonna boast about anything, but he's gonna know everything, and he's gonna be like, I remember when you helped them. I remember when you helped the poor.
Well done, my
Yeah.
good and faithful
And
servant.
I also remember when you didn't forgive that guy, and that guy. He told me to forgive you the way you forgave, so you ready?
You're right.
Matthew 7.
Stand, gird your loins. 1 Peter chapter 1. For all flesh is like grass, and all its glory like the flower of grass. The grass withers, the flower falls, but the word of the Lord remains forever. And this word is the gospel. This word is the good news that was preached to you. The good news. The good news is, thank God, I don't have to have all those things. Thank God that I can rely on the blood of His Son for my salvation. Thank God. Otherwise, I'm lost. I'm lost. Any further comments?